Can you hear me now, remote? Sorry. Yeah.
We can't hear you.
Yeah. So we just listed all the different JavaScript or data types in JavaScript. It consists of string, numbers, Boolean, undefined, null, and there's objects and arrays, and there's a couple other, but we're just going to focus on those primarily. So in order to create a variable, we use const. Let's call it, what do we call it? Something equals ice cream. What's another way you can create a variable? For Portillo's. What's the difference between let and const?
Constant can't change.
What about let?
Let can be iterated over.
Well, ish. Objects that act as pointers actually change the contents of what they point to.
So let, you essentially just can't declare another variable with the same name. Just to kind of think of it like that, just high level. In const, like, you can't change something into another variable.
If you do make another let, that's a second one, right? I think I've run into that with loops. An issue I would do is I write let instead of redefining it. It would be making a whole other variable with the same name. At least I think that's what was happening.
I think that's with var. But does it redeclares that variable let?
I think it redeclares it and ignores the one outside of your loop. And that got me into a lot of issues. I don't know if anyone else had that. It was a stupid thing that.
I was under the impression that when you do let, you can't declare let, or you can't say let another again. It's just right.
So both let and constant have
okay, so
block scope, right?
But it
is that you can't use that declaration in the same scope.
Yeah,
right.
That might have been like both.
Let's just see something. Right here.
Yeah.
So I tried to declare let again another. It just says like another has already been declared. That's the error you should see when you. So what determines a string? Like what makes a string a string?
Quotations.
Right. Yep. So we have numbers or integers. What's an int? Like, so yeah, what is int?
Yeah.
Floats, right. So we have numbers, which determines like a number. All right, Boolean values.
True, false.
And we also have const. Oh. So
is undefined a string or a reserved word?
Remote, can you hear us?
We can. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, awesome.
Did one of you have a question real quick?
Yeah, sorry, this is Hal. I wondered, is undefined a string or is it a declared or reserved word?
undefined, the actual undefined syntax is a declared. It's like you can't declare a variable as undefined. You can't like call let undefined equals something else. But so it's not technically, it's not a string either. It's like it's its own data type. It's undefined.
So if I'm detecting it in an if statement, I'm looking for just the word undefined, no quotes around it.
Correct.
Thanks.
Yep. We also have null. Does anybody know what null is? What is it?
It's the same as just variable name.
The lack of value.
There we go. Thank you, Hal. See, like no, there's no value there. It's not undefined. It's not a number. It's not a string. There's no value there. All right. What's an object? How do I make an object?
Curly braces.
Sweet. Great. And what does an object consist of? Great. So how, if I want to make an object of, I don't know, some car manufacturers
Key value pairs.
and the key and I don't know. Yeah, like the country of origin or the country that they belong to. Their headquarters in. So, but yeah, so like. So, name some car companies. I came quick to say that one. I don't even know how to spell Hyundai. Was that okay, yeah, so key value pairs. How about arrays?
Square brackets.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We never want to do that. Did you guys learn to use the semicolon or at the end of JavaScript?
Yeah.
Okay.
Technically, yes and no.
Yeah, like
There are
so.
certain cases.
Technically, I don't know. I always do because that's just how I learned. But like, as a lot of like other languages don't use them, JavaScript is kind of allowing the code to run and like without the ending. And like linters, which will tell you errors in your code, or like overall best practices aren't as yeah, they don't kind of care. Yeah, they don't necessarily care anymore. But yeah, you're right.
And also, certain statements that are return always end that line with a semicolon, whether you put it in there or not.
Right.
So if you're counting on it not, then we'll run the code after.
I'm gonna delete that.
Question,
Yep.
where does NaN fit into that scheme?
Not
Not
enough.
enough. I believe you'll get NaN if you try to divide a number by 0.
Right.
For
Sure.
example.
I've seen it some other places in code. But
Kind of utilize a string or something
Yeah.
while you're trying to do math.
yeah, so if you're trying to like add the number 1 to the string of 4, or not even 4, say like a word, it'll say like not a number. like the string is not a number, so it can't compute that specific expression.
Got it.
So we also have date. Dates. Kind of cool. We have functions. How do we declare a function? Okay. There's a couple other ways we can do a function. Yeah, or
Arrow.
can declare a function as a variable. Oh. And also, you guys familiar with arrow functions yet? What determines an arrow function? What makes an arrow function an arrow function?
Gotta add that arrow.
There you go. Oh yeah. Now how do I execute a function? So let's do it. Cool.
May I ask, what does an arrow function do that's special? I've not run across it before.
There's the main thing is just like from a syntax perspective, it's easier instead of writing function all the time, but you'll get into this more when we're in the React. We're using the React library, in that it doesn't use the keyword this, like, so you have access to this with this keyword, and it's in the current scope of the function. So you don't have to add this keyword, which is all about scoping, global scope, lexical scope, and you don't necessarily have to worry about that now. But there are certain cases where you are unable to use an arrow function because of that. So, but you don't, like, majority of the time, ES6, the new syntax version that JavaScript is on, utilizes arrow functions majority of the time.
Interesting. Thanks.
So Booleans. What is this gonna return? What's this one gonna return? Oh, whoops. We're getting there. How about so what about this?
False.
It's actually true. So what does the double equals on? What? Now what is that going to equal? Why is that? Yeah, so the double equal signs only checks by value. The triple equal signs checks by value and the type of data type it is. So a lot of the times, most of the time, you'll only be using double equal signs. But what else we have? Integers. I'm going to do a let number. Is that a function? So this, oh. Disregard. So
Is it a function of an integer? So do you have to type integer is integer?
there we go. Thank you. You can also use, is it type of? Or is it type? Or is it just? See, let's Google it. Oh, yeah, sorry. I've been learning Python a lot lately, so. The type of returns the data type it is. So if I do string, right? Now arrays will show up as an object because in JavaScript everything's an object. So cool. What else we got? What are some built-in methods? So
Uppercase?
yeah, sweet. So if I want to create, if I want to make name all uppercase. Two lowercase. Yeah. So we're not going to go through all the built-in methods. Like JavaScript has, I don't even know, hundreds of thousands of built-in methods. But these are just kind of some basic ones. How do I add strings together?
Concat?
What is it? Tell me what to type, somebody.
STR1.
STR.
Or you could do .concat.
Okay.
STR2.
I want a space. So.
Could you just do that with a plus though?
Yeah.
Yep. Same thing. We get the same thing.
But if you put the space through,
Quotation.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, we're gonna go on that for a second.
No, I don't know what it's called, but the backtick inline notation,
String interpolation.
interpolation. Yeah, that one.
So if you want the same thing, And let's do, yeah. If you're, so like, I want to say like my name is, let's go. I want to add this into, I can say like plus string 1 plus string 2. My name is Tom, or I can do, it's called string interpolation, where I use the back tilde and just essentially type in the string. And it already records that space. Same thing. Let's go through operators real quick. If I want to add these two numbers together, yeah, let's go num1. Uh-oh, what's going on? Cool. That's 6. You have addition. You have subtraction. You have multiplication. Division. You don't need to keep them all connected. You can space them out. What else do we have?
Modulo.
There we go. What a modular means? Yeah, modular finds the remainder of the integer. Yeah, it's really helpful as you guys, I'm sure, as you guys are going through challenges to use modular. Is it modular? I always can't say it.
Also the exponents.
You have some number of unitary operators.
What's that?
You also have some unitary operators when you operate on a single.
Oh, yes, correct. Yeah, yeah. We'll get to all that. So we also have like conditional operators. So like if I'm doing an if statement, if 2 is greater than 4, console log. Is 2 greater than 4? Yeah. So yeah, and you can make it ternary. Yeah. So we have, this is greater than, we have greater than or equals to. We have less than or equals to. We have equals. I'm going to go on. Yeah, I'm going to. Sorry. Less than or equal to. We have greater than or equal to. We have equals. We have the triple equals, which is by value and type. We have not equals. What about and or statements?
And double percent or double. You say height?
Pipe. They're pipes.
Is that what that's called?
I have no idea. Is that what we're calling it now?
So we're calling it.
One second.
Yeah.
That is what it's
So like if 2 is less than or equal to 4 and 5 is greater than or equal to 4. That works. Cool. Couple more. I think we already did. We already did declaring a function, turning. So yeah, the return statement. When you're writing a function, always return a value, please. Or just the return statement will just stop that piece of that function right then and there. How do I pass a parameter within a function? So I want to like, I want to pass 2 into this function. Where do I, how do I pass it in? Then how do I call this function?
curiosities to,
Then I want to pass the variable. I'm going to execute this. Yeah. So yeah. Cool. So actually making good time. What questions do you guys have right now? Is there anything specifically you guys want me to go over? Reiterate over conditional statements? Anything? Remote?
Switch statements, like the switch and case statements.
Oh. So yeah, we're not going to cover that today. We're going to go in that a little bit more depth later on. But yeah, there's switch statements, switch and case statements, which is like another way to do if-else statements. Kind of looks. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And then there's also like not equals. Sorry. So like. Num. Let's see how we do this. So yeah. So the not equals essentially false. It's like a false view. I think
The ternary operator, question mark.
we could do a ternary. Let's go over it if you guys want to. So a ternary is another way to do like if statements. So I'm going to let if 2 is greater than or less than 4, question mark. It's like if 2 is less than 4, question mark, return true, else return false. we're gonna cover this a lot later, just to let you guys know. And so I want to console log some value true. If I change it, false. You don't have to worry about that now. You guys can still use if else statements and all that stuff. Right now, what else do you want to go? Is there anything else? Anybody? Go ahead. All right. So we're ahead of schedule, which is good. Gives you guys a lot more time to work on the homework. We essentially lost a day with yesterday, so we essentially tried to cram a bunch of stuff in today. Essentially covering almost 2 days worth of curriculum today. So let's go over some of the challenges for today. We're going to go over 99 bottles. So 99 bottles is, you know the song 99 bottles of beer on the wall. So you're going to have to create a function that will print out 99 bottles, like the entire song, decrement, like decreasing 99, 98, 97, all the way to until you get to 1, and then you're going to have to print this out as well. Oh, what's going on? And we don't, the goal is to not hard code this. The goal is to make the function efficient so you're not having to hard code 99 times. Because we want to be able to pass in any amount of bottles we want in there and have it print out the correct number of the correct song. And the key thing is when you're pass one down, the bottles, when there's one bottle, it's no longer plural. It's got to switch to singular. So things to take into consideration: use for loops, while loops. You can use for each. So then there's that one. And then we've got def grammar. Have you guys taken a look at this yet? All right. This one's actually pretty difficult, but you guys are going to be working together through this. So essentially, when you run the program, these conditions must be executed based on whatever the input is. So, for example, write a program which can imitate a grammarly's hard of hearing and follows these constraints. If you don't put anything in, if you just click enter, it responds with what. If you ask a question and any number or in any string is lowercase, it'll tell you to speak up, kid. And if you talk to her in all uppercases, she'll respond, no, not since 1946. The very first time you say goodbye, in all caps, she says, leaving so soon. Then if you say it the second time, it says later skater, and the program exits. It's actually really difficult to do in JavaScript. So in order to, before you even start doing this one, so here's kind of like an example. In Python, it's actually pretty, I don't want to say straightforward, but it's easier to do in Python than it is JavaScript. So when you are doing JavaScript, make sure you read these items. So in JavaScript, so for example, I so that's the prompt method in JavaScript. But in order to run a file, and have this do this in the browser is kind of difficult. So there are other areas like with this package that you guys can take a look at and see if you guys can figure it out and make it work just by running a file. So those, I think that's it. And then just go through terminal commands or command line stuff. If you want to review that. Any questions? Otherwise, I'm going to let you guys go and work on the challenges. Today might not seem that long. It's going to get longer. The challenges are going to get progressively more difficult. So yeah. Like, do you have anything?
Oh, that's it.
Any advice on 99 grandmas, 99 bottles, or Deaf Grandma?
No, but see if we can get it done.
Yes.
So the 99 bottles.
I'm sorry?
So for the 99 bottles, probably doing more.
Correct, yeah. So I'm not,
We're
well,
ready to work together.
yeah, so today we're going to talk about pair programming in a second. How do you, so pick somebody, ideally just pick anybody, and you guys can pair program together. Have anybody heard of pair programming before?
One dictates.
Yeah, so pair programming is really not popular. I mean, it is. A lot of companies pair program at least a couple of days a week, and it cuts down on a couple of things. Errors. It gets the person who's, so one, there's a driver and a navigator. Thank you. The driver is typing, correct? And the navigator is telling the driver what to type. And so that gets both the driver, the navigator, it enhances their ability to communicate what their thoughts are, like their way of thinking, and it helps to get another person's perspective of how they think on solving a problem. And also it'll cut down on errors because you have two eyes watching the code, and just two brains are better than one always. So yeah.
It's important to stick to that rule of like one person typing and one person making a decision. If the person at the keyboard is just typing away and the person navigating is just watching, they're just a passenger along the ride, that's not what we want. We want the person who's not typing to be making a decision. And this, if both people feel that one person's stronger and that person's typing and then also making all the decisions, that just gets in the way of both people learning.
And ask questions with your partners. Like, why is that there? Or like, if you're the driver and so the navigator's doing something that you don't quite understand, have them explain it to you why, because that's just going to help.
And we can choose to do this in JavaScript or Python.
In this one,
we're doing it in JavaScript.
right now, since we did JavaScript fundamentals, try to do it in JavaScript.
So do you want this done in VS Code?
Correct.
And did you show us how to?
Push code yet?
Yeah, so that it works like correctly. That's what
Okay, so in order to execute files, yeah, it's just node. So what I'm typing is node.
Yeah.
And then that's going to execute the file. So, for example, function. Okay. That's weird.
And one more thing about the pair programming, you should switch off being the navigator and the driver pretty often. So just slap each other what you have with the code, start running it on the other person's laptop, switch off who's driving and navigating.
Yeah, if you want to execute the code, create a JavaScript file, write your challenge in there, and solve it that way. There's a function, and then when you want to execute it, just have the invoke the function at the very end. This is called invoking, and then you should see everything.
Is it going to matter now how we set up our directory and do our challenges? Are we going to have to send some of the project there?
I mean, ideally, I just created on my desktop, I created a code platoon directory. In there is 1 week or week 1 JavaScript, Python directories, and then break them out like that. I don't know if you.
Tomorrow we'll go over how to turn in your work.
Yeah.
And we'll be making pull requests and things like that. But for now, just work on running and writing code locally. And we'll talk about how to turn it in tomorrow. And remote students we often forget when someone asks a question and they're not near the microphone and you didn't know what the question was. Ask us to repeat the question. It's fine. Just speak up and ask us to repeat the question. You didn't hear that, and we will spare the video that way too.
So yeah, when you execute your file, your Node or JS file or Python, it should look like this in the terminal.